All right, everyone. So today we are going to we're gonna go ahead and move on. But before we do, I want to walk you guys through OneNote. You guys haven't really been having as many issues, but some of the students have been having problems with OneNote, going through OneNote. So I want to show you guys exactly how to do it, how to access everything. Just so that everybody is still, okay? So first of all, you find your one class notebook over here on the side. Hopefully it works. Okay. So then you're gonna go ahead and sign into the OneNote. It should automatically sign you in. If it doesn't, it's gonna be the same information that you use when you get into Schoology. You guys won't see this. It'll just open up into your classroom notebook. You're gonna want to hit Open Notebook. All right. So then you're gonna find that you guys only see your name, okay? So what you do is you click your name, and I've actually streamlined it. So now there's only class notes and practice notes. So under class notes is where you're gonna find your Unit 2 vocabulary. And so like today, you guys are gonna be completing, let me show you. You guys are going to be, oh, here it is. You're going to be completing this section, the fallacy section, okay? I'm going to give you time at the end of class to do that, because hopefully we'll get through all of that. So right now, by the end of Friday, you should definitely have your literary devices complete, your fallacies, and then you should also have this section complete, the information argument, not this section, sorry. The reasoning, evidence, and inferencing. And I'm going to be checking that on Saturday morning, so these do need to be updated. Okay? No, it's going to be each section. Okay? And so remember, if I don't go over that particular word while we're in class, use the Merriam-Webster dictionary to do it. Okay? I also went ahead and uploaded the PowerPoint from yesterday, just so that you guys have it. Here's your constructive discussion guides. And then the practices, for those of you that were here when I assigned them, please make sure that you have them complete. There's the 3 little pigs. And just so you remember to input your answers, you're gonna go to draw. Make sure this is clicked over here, this icon, and then you just double click and it'll create a text box and you can move that text box around. No. No, and what's cool about these draw boxes is you can actually like make them bigger, smaller, and everything like that. So the other thing too I want to show you is where it says Untitled page, you can actually take your own notes here. So you can put like a date and you can put, you know, these are notes for whatever and take the notes in there. And I want to say, yeah. So here's what's called an immersive reader. Let's say that you're not sure what it's saying. If you're an ESL student, this will read it to you. You can change the page colors. And you can also, I think, change the page version of it. So those are definitely things that you can do. So there's all kinds of things that you can do in there, and you can just play around with it. Make sense? All right. So does anybody have any questions about the OneNote? No? Okay. This class has been pretty on it with this one, so I'm not really worried about y'all. I just wanted to make sure that there was any confusion. So yes, don't draw the stuff in there. You can use the text box. That would be a pretty cool peek to see though. So yeah. So let's recap real fast. What is a bias? Yes, so they're opinions based off of your own experiences, so they're preconceived ideas. Racism, is that a bias? Yes, but is all biases racism? No. Okay, so think of racism as biases with hate kind of thrown in there. Are all biases bad? No, there's some that can work in your favor sometimes. Does everybody have a bias?
Usually.
Yeah. Yeah, because everybody has their own experiences, right? So even if we don't think we have biases, we do have them. They're called implicit biases. They're the ones that are kind of ingrained in us and we don't even realize it. Okay, we all have them. Why is it important to acknowledge them? Yeah, it keeps you from prejudging people, and that gives them more opportunities for you to actually get to know them, right? And that's kind of important. So then we talked about logical reasoning. There's two types. What types are they? Inductive, and deductive, yes. Inductive is based off of what? Yeah, remember? Yeah, specific evidence. So facts, statistics, those types of things, okay? So deductive, on the other hand, is broader. We come to a conclusion first, and then we find evidence to support that through quotes and scenarios. Okay, so, and inferencing is a part of which one? The deductive, yes. Okay, so definitely. And so using both of those combined will help us understand the text a lot better, okay? So just like there's logical reasoning, which is the way we process information and think about it and come to our conclusions, there's something called logical fallacy. And so that's unsubstantiated arguments. What's unsubstantiated mean? Not based on facts. It doesn't have enough facts to be true. It may sound true, but it doesn't have enough facts to be supported, right? So like I said, if I were to walk in here and say the Longhorns are the best football team in the world, and I don't support that, that's an unsubstantiated opinion or argument, right? But if I start providing facts, maybe I can substantiate that. So logical fallacies, what are they? As always, let's break it down. We know that logical means the way we think about something, and a fallacy, on the other hand, means a false or mistaken idea. So therefore, a logical fallacy would be a mistaken way of thinking about something. Okay. So have you ever heard, I don't know if you've ever heard anybody say it, but they're like, that's a fallacy. It's another way of saying that's a lie. Okay. Like if you hear a story and then somebody's like, that's a fallacy. It's a lie or it's not true. Okay. And it doesn't mean that they're doing it intentionally. Okay. We have to start thinking about lies and reshaping the way people say things, not necessarily to be mean or to be negative. It's just sometimes that's what people truly believe. But again, you have to be able to support it. So any questions on that so far? Okay. So another way of thinking of logical fallacies is that they are arguments that do not make any sense because the reasons that support the argument are flawed. Okay. So sometimes they'll actually make an argument and it's like, that kind of sounds true, but then it kind of doesn't make any sense. That's not adding up. Those are logical fallacies. And they have very specific names. So normally if there's any time you feel like that doesn't make sense, a logical fallacy is involved. Okay. Now, students of mine from last year, we kind of went through this real fast last year before spring break, and then we never came back. But we're going to get more in depth with it. So there are many logical fallacies, but we're going to focus on the following, and I'm going to get more in depth with it. And so this is important because some of these are on your vocabulary. So we have hasty generalization, anecdotal fallacy, bandwagon fallacy, red herring, slippery slope, circular argument begging the question, straw man fallacy, post hoc ergo propter hoc, either or false choice, genetic fallacy, and cherry picking. So, in order to avoid having your arguments undermined by logical fallacies, you have to have a strong understanding of what they are and how they function. So you don't want to just know these so that you can prove the other person wrong, right? And take apart their argument. You want to make sure that your arguments don't have these either. Because if your arguments have these, other people can jump on it, right? And they can take it piece by piece apart. So I always tell my debaters, you want to make sure you avoid these and you have a strong argument with enough evidence to support it, or they're literally going to take it piece by piece, right? And anytime they say something, I take their stuff apart piece by piece, and so that way they know what that's like. And so it's important for you guys also to have that, because just in life, you're going to come across many discussions where you're trying to prove your point, and you want to make sure you have the stronger foothold, okay? So let's review and complete the logical fallacy here pod. So you're going to, again, go through this, guys, by yourself. You're going to put your name, and then you're going to join the lesson because there are some activities, but I'm going to walk you through them so at least you have a stronger understanding of them, okay? And the nearpod is due by Friday at 11:59. Okay, so logical fallacies, unsubstantiated arguments. So this is going to be a discussion between Fry and Bender. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Futurama, but they're best friends, but they always argue with each other. So this is Fry and Bender. He says, if you ask me, I think robots should take over the world. And Fry says, okay, I'll accept your premise. What's a premise? Your opinion, your argument, your stance. State your argument, but you better make it good. Okay, so every argument that he's going to post, every piece of evidence, Fry is going to tell him whether it works or not. Okay, so it's kind of they're having a debate. In Futurama probably, but in my PowerPoint video. So Bender's argument, the first one. I have met a few humans and they were horrible. Therefore, I conclude that all humans are ugly, evil, and smell gross. Fry finds that this argument is an unsubstantiated argument because it is based on a hasty generalization. This is where biases come in. Biases, prejudices, and stereotypes. Chance does not have enough information or has been studied enough to make those sweeping conclusions, right? I can sit there and tell you, for example, so I studied Chinese literature, right? And if I make a hasty generalization and say, all Chinese people know the Shi Ji, like that's one of the very first documents they ever have. And I can honestly say that every Chinese person I have ever met does know it. However, China has more people in the world than any other country, and I've only met about 100 or so of them. So can I truly say that every single Chinese person knows it? No, right? That's also like saying every Latino I come across speaks Spanish. Well, that might be true to your experience, but then if you met Ms. Garcia, you would know that that is a false claim, right? So that's a hasty generalization. And that's where bias does come in big time. Any questions about that one? Pretty simple, right? All right, then there's next argument. I remember a long time ago that humans tried to destroy robots. It was horrible. Fry finds that this is also unsubstantiated because that's an anecdotal fallacy. It's an overly striking story. Using a shocking or unusual story from the past to argue there's a high probability of the event happening again, right? So we all know that the dinosaurs died from a meteor strike, right? Well, I can sit there and say, oh, I know that's going to happen because it happened before. It's going to happen again. That's how the world's going to end. Well, there might be a probability of that, but I'm making it seem like that's the only probability. Right? So using a story that catches your attention to make it seem like this is what's going to happen. But that's the only probability. So you want to avoid those. Make sense? And this is always a story, because remember, anecdotal is always a story. Questions? I always mispronounce it. I gave you that disclaimer before. I always mispronounce it. Is it anecdote? I will find out today to make sure. But my brain has a really hard time. functioning on that. So, Bender's next argument. Everyone thinks that robots should overthrow humans. It is an extremely popular premise. That's unsubstantiated because we call that a bandwagon fallacy. It's appealing to popularity, assuming that because an argument or action is popular, it must be valid. Popularity has no bearing on validity. Okay, so have you ever heard the term bandwagon? Oh, you're jumping on the bandwagon, right? You're just jumping on it because it's popular. But just because it's popular doesn't mean that it's true. And we've seen this time and time again. Okay? So you want to make sure that even if the idea is popular, you are making sure that it is a valid argument. It's fine to go with the popular idea if it can be supported. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions? Pretty easy so far. So then you're going to take a poll. So we'll go through this one together. So in the anime, the Demon Slayer, Tanjiro stands up for his sister, Nezuki, even after she becomes a demon. However, all the other Demon Slayers argue that she is evil because all demons are evil. What logical fallacy are the Demon Slayers relying on? Hasty generalization or bandwagon? Hasty generalization? Huh? Hasty generalization? It would be a hasty generalization. Now, if I had said that's also the most popular idea for everyone, then that would become that way. Okay? And sometimes you can actually apply various fallacies to one argument, right? So I could easily have said, okay, well, since all the other Demon Slayers are bandwagon, but this is the one that fits the best. So I just gave you the answer for that. So Bender's argument. They say robots and humans should work alongside one another. But what about the humans that cause other robots to short circuit? Why would this be unsubstantiated? Because we call this a red herring. So does everybody know what a herring is? Huh? It's a fish. So think about fish. Do they smell good? No. So this argument smells bad. So it's shifting the topic. The information is irrelevant and distracting from the main argument. Because he's basically trying to call attention to a small group of people, and it has nothing to do with why we should overthrow them, right? So it's kind of trying to shift your sight away from the main topic. A lot of people use this all the time, right? This happens even in everyday life when you're arguing, like if you're in a relationship or you're arguing with a friend, and sometimes they'll just totally change the topic. They'll bring something up from the past, right? You know, we're arguing about what time to go to the movie, and they bring up the time, you know, I forgot to show up to something 2 years ago. What does that have to do with right now, right? So that's a red herring. It smells fishy.
The red herring, there is also
yeah. Yeah. There's the anecdotal. Anecdotal. Yes, fallacy. So see, that's when you see now you're starting to be able to say, like, not only is your argument wrong on this fallacy, you're all here over here, so it's really wrong, right? Okay, Bender's next argument. If we are nice to humans and help them now, they will constantly demand us to work for them. So this is unsubstantiated because we call this a slippery slope. One event will lead to another. One cannot guarantee that one event will lead to another more extreme event. Okay, so one of the arguments when they talked about virtual learning or hybrid learning was all the kids are going to fall behind and they won't get an education, and then just for the rest of their life they're going to be behind. Well, when we went down that slope really fast, right? Like we didn't even, they might struggle, like you know, maybe we could catch up. It was just true. So that's when you take an argument to the extreme. Just because of this does not necessarily mean we're going to end up at the extreme result. And so we call that a slippery slope because you can't gain it. They don't give you a chance to gain the ground, understand? And people use this one, especially women. So, poll. In the movie series The Avengers, Captain America often argues with Iron Man about technology. Captain America believes that if Iron Man continues to try and improve technology, that technology will lead to disaster. Captain America's argument is flawed because he is supporting it with witch fallacy. Where is that? Anecdotal fallacy, slippery slope, red herring. What did you say? Slippery slope. Yeah, right? Yeah, slippery slope. Because he's going from one extreme to the next. And Iron Man actually tries to talk to him about that. And he's like, well, no, this is why I'm doing it. This is why. And he's like, no, it's going to just destroy us all. And granted, there were examples of how that could be possible in many of the movies, but it was just an extreme from one to the extreme. So that's a slippery slope. All right, then this next argument. Robots are better leaders because we have better leadership skills. This is unsubstantiated because we call that a circular argument or begging the question. Assuming the question is already answered, simply restating your argument instead of proving it. Right? So, UT is the best university in the world because it's the best university. Right? You're like, well, you just basically said the same thing. You just kind of flipped it a little bit. That's a circular. You're just going around in a circle over and over and over again. And we call it begging the question because the question is never answered. Because the person is still left begging, like, tell me the answer. You're saying the same thing. Yes. Yeah. Well, why do you need that? Because I want it. Well, why do you want it? Because I need it. Okay, well, that's the same thing. So you were going in a circular argument. Okay, then there's next argument. You disagreeing with my premise means you hate robots. Why do humans hate robots so much? So this is substantiated because we call this the straw man fallacy. It's an attack. Misrepresenting or attacking the other person's point of view because it does not match your own, right? So if somebody says, man, I just really did not like that last Avengers movie. Oh, you must hate Marvel. You just don't understand it. Wait a minute. I just said I didn't like the last movie. So it's kind of taking the person that does not agree with you and saying that they must absolutely be opposed to it. And that's not necessarily the case. Okay, and that happens a lot right now, especially in politics. It's either you're with me or against me, kind of idea. And that's not necessarily true. So you're basically attacking them. Okay. And you guys know why it's called the straw man? Okay, so back in the day when they used to have the swords and the guns with the swords at the end, they used to practice attacking straw men. And so that's why, so think about that, you're attacking it, you're charging at it, that's what that fallacy is. Okay, that's where that gets at. But first, you have a whole bunch of useless knowledge. Okay, next one. Bender's argument is, I met you, fine, a human, and then I began malfunctioning. You and all humans are to blame. This one is called post hoc ergo propter hoc. It's a weak correlation or false cause. Just because B followed A does not mean that A caused B. Okay? So, this can work in both ways, for bad and good. So, I would love to sit there and say, when Ms. Garcia got hired as an ESL teacher and Ms. Vargas, all of our ESL students automatically started doing amazing. Their test scores went up, they did all these things. Now, is there a correlation? Probably, but am I their only teacher? No, right? They have all the teachers in the school that teach them. So can I just say that if I was the sole cause of that? No, that's a weak correlation, okay? So some of these also tend to do is like, this group of people moves into this neighborhood and now the neighborhood's gone down. Well, can you technically support that? Is there data to support that argument? Or are you just making that correlation? If you're just making a correlation without data to prove it, it's post hoc. The next argument, it is better to destroy all humans than to allow them to destroy us. This is unsubstantiated because we call this either or false choice. It's too simplistic. Oversimplifying the issue because there are more than two possible outcomes. So that's the black and white choice, right? It's you're either this or you're this. Well, no, right? You're either liberal or you're conservative. You're either for this or you're against this. Well, no, there's a lot of things that maybe you're in the middle. There's a lot of gray in life. So presenting arguments that are either or undermine you because you don't allow for the fact that there is gray in life. And a lot of people do this. It's another way of going to the extremes. So, questions yet? You good? Nathaniel, you good? All right. All humans start out as incompetent babies, so they must grow up to be incompetent adults. So this is unsubstantiated because we call this a genetic fallacy. So genetics, if you think about that, that's biology, right? That's what ties us to our family. So it's a false judgment. Judging an idea or person based on its origin without considering a change is possible. So think about you when you were a kid. Are you the same person now as when you were a kid? No, right? There's a lot of things you know how to do now. You know how to express yourself, right? I have an 8-year-old, and he's really intelligent, but sometimes I'm like, what are you saying? Because he doesn't have all the right words, right? Or even know how to behave in certain ways. But compared to my 18-year-old, who's extremely articulate and he has all these ideas that he can form, that shows that people progress. Just like people, ideas can progress too. You can start off with one idea and let that grow, right? Even programs or institutions. When we got here, the ESL program was one thing. We worked together and we changed it to fit what we thought our students needed. So it grew. So can you base our program based on what it used to be? No. So that's the same thing. So that's a genetic fallacy. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with humans. It can be with ideas and institutions as well. All right, the last one. Bender's argument. A recent study found that 90% of scientists agree that robots overthrowing humans would be better for global health. But he forgets to tell you that 9 out of 10 of the scientists were robots. Okay? We call that cherry picking. Suppressing evidence, providing incomplete evidence or only evidence that supports your premise. People do this all the time. One of the main ways we actually see it is when there's reviews for movies. They'll say, phenomenal, right? But they leave off the part that says, phenomenally bad. You know, things like that. Reviews are huge on cherry picking because they want you to buy their products, and therefore they're only going to pick the evidence that supports it. And we hear this all the time. And this is where they do use facts and statistics, but it's incomplete. So it's incomplete evidence. So we use this people use this all the time too. Especially if you're arguing and you're like, well, why are you mad? Because I did this, blah, blah, blah. But then they forget to leave out they always leave out the part where they kind of took part in that too. Any questions? Okay. I think you guys are getting a good understanding of it. So let's do one last poll. So, Richard was a huge fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Same, this one was too. But he argued that the movie version was just as good as the animated series and explained that, I don't know his man's name, but Sanji of the Daily Telegraph in the United Kingdom called the movie breathtaking. I, however, pointed out that Sanji actually said the movie was a quite breathtakingly inept hodgepodge. Richard's premise that the movie is really good is undermined by what fallacy? Yes, cherry picking. It couldn't be bandwagon because what's the bandwagon?
Other people
yeah, based on popularity. And what's the popular belief in this movie? That's horrible. Absolutely horrible. And that's because I like M. Night Shyamalan. Horrible. So that would be bandwagon. False choice would be if he had said what? If I didn't agree that it was a good movie, then I must what? So the false choice is kind of like the extreme one, remember? So it's kind of like, oh, well, then you either like it or you don't. But maybe there were parts that I kind of liked, you know? Yeah, there were certain things that were like, okay, but if you're a huge fan of the anime, there's a whole bunch of reasons you wouldn't like it. But I have met people who have not watched the series, the animated series, that actually think the movie's not bad. Okay, so that's making it seem like you're either you fear this or that. So it will be cherry picking. All right, guys. So, is there any questions with that? Okay, so final score. Since all of Bender's arguments were based on logical fallacies, his premise is unsubstantiated, therefore Bender loses. Okay. And basically that's how debate works. So you sit there and you argue and you pick it apart. All right. So now that we have gone through those, just like yesterday, you're going to go into your one-class notebook, or if you have a hard copy, and you're going to locate the units you vocabulary, and you're going to do the fallacy section. And I think today all the fallacies should be within that nearpod. And if you need me to print that out for you, nearpod, I can do that. And again, it's due by Friday, September 11th. So remember, by Friday, you want to have the literary devices complete, the reasoning section, and the fallacy. Any questions? Daniel, you good? Okay. Well, if you don't have any questions, you can. This is your kind of independent study work time, and you can do that. Bye, Nathaniel.